My children thought they could divide my inheritance while I lay unconscious on an operating table. But they had no idea I'd been moving money to offshore accounts for 15 years. When I woke up from my emergency heart surgery to find them, arguing over who gets my house, I realized it was time to teach them what a decorated Army sergeant really keeps in reserve. I'm Margaret Maggie Sullivan, and I spent 22 years serving this country before I ever had the luxury of thinking about retirement. 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq, and countless months away from home while my ex-husband Carl raised our 3 kids. When I finally hung up my combat boots at 45, I thought I'd earned the right to a peaceful relationship with my children. I was wrong. After my discharge, I threw everything I had into making up for lost time. I used my military pension and the substantial settlement from a service-related injury to buy a beautiful colonial house in Riverside, Connecticut. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, wraparound porch, and a 2-car garage. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine, and more importantly, it was big enough for my kids to come home to whenever they needed. Rebecca, my eldest at 32, had always been the ambitious one. MBA from Northwestern, senior marketing director at some tech company in Manhattan, always dressed like she stepped out of a business magazine. She'd visit twice a year, usually when she needed something, career advice, a place to decompress from her high-pressure job, or money for her daughter Emma's private school tuition that her divorce settlement didn't quite cover. Then there was Michael, 29, my middle child who'd inherited my stubborn streak but none of my discipline. He'd started 3 different businesses in the past 5 years, each one more promising than the last, each one requiring a loan from Mom to get off the ground. His latest venture was some kind of cryptocurrency trading platform that he swore would make us all millionaires. I'd already invested $40,000 in his dreams. Finally, there was Jessica, my baby at 26. Sweet, artistic Jessica, who'd been drifting through life since college, trying to find herself through various creative pursuits. Photography, pottery, freelance graphic design, she'd tried them all with varying degrees of success. She lived in my basement, claiming she was saving money for her own place, but I'd been supporting her fully for 3 years now. Don't get me wrong, I loved my children fiercely. Every dollar I spent on them, every favor I granted, every time I opened my door and my wallet, I did it gladly. They were my life's greatest accomplishment, more important to me than any medal or commendation I'd earned in the service. But somewhere along the way, my generosity had become their expectation. The first sign of trouble came last Christmas. I'd spent weeks planning the perfect family gathering, buying gifts, preparing their favorite foods, decorating the house like something out of a holiday movie. Rebecca showed up 3 hours late because she'd had to stop by her ex's house to drop off Emma. Michael arrived with his girlfriend du jour, a wannabe influencer named Brandy who spent the entire evening taking selfies in front of my Christmas tree. Jessica emerged from the basement long enough to grab a plate of food before disappearing back downstairs to video chat with some guy she'd met online. During dinner, instead of the warm family conversation I'd hoped for, I found myself listening to a litany of complaints and requests. Rebecca needed help with Emma's spring break trip to Europe. Apparently, a 13-year-old needed to see Paris to be culturally well-rounded. Michael's cryptocurrency platform needed another $20,000 for marketing and user acquisition. Jessica wanted to move to Portland where the art scene was more supportive, but needed first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, and moving expenses. I sat there, carving the turkey I'd spent all morning preparing, wondering when I'd become nothing more than an ATM to my own children. But I smiled, nodded, and mentally calculated how much I could afford to give them without completely depleting my savings. After all, what else was I saving for? I was 54 years old, single, and my greatest joy came from being able to help my kids succeed. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and really looked at my financial situation. My military pension covered my basic living expenses, but the extra money, the money I used to fund my children's lives, came from careful investments I'd made over the years. Stock portfolios, real estate investments, and yes, several offshore accounts I'd opened during my time stationed overseas. Most people didn't realize how easy it was for military personnel to set up legitimate international banking relationships. I'd been moving money quietly for 15 years, not to hide it from the government. Everything was properly reported and taxed, but to protect it from situations exactly like this. My ex-husband had tried to go after my military benefits during our divorce. Rebecca's ex-husband had made veiled threats about coming after family money during their custody battle. I'd learned early that sometimes the people closest to you were the ones you needed to protect yourself from most. The offshore accounts weren't some shady tax haven scheme. They were legitimate savings accounts in banks in countries where I'd been stationed: Germany, South Korea, and Japan. I'd kept them active, slowly transferring money over the years, building a nest egg that existed completely outside my children's knowledge or expectations. By my calculations, I had roughly $1.2 million sitting in these accounts, money that my children had no idea existed, but I wasn't planning to tell them about it. Why would I? They already expected everything I had here in the States. The house, my investment portfolios, my life insurance policies. In their minds, it was all theirs eventually. Adding another $1 million+ to that equation would only make them more demanding, more entitled, more convinced that Mom's money was their money. Spring arrived early that year, and with it came a steady stream of requests for help. Rebecca needed money for Emma's summer camp. Not just any camp, but a specialized STEM program that cost more than some people's cars. Michael's cryptocurrency venture had hit another snag and needed bridge funding to avoid bankruptcy. Jessica had decided that Portland wasn't right for her after all. Now she wanted to move to Austin where she could really explore her artistic vision. I found myself saying yes to everything, as always. But this time, I was keeping careful track of exactly how much each child was costing me. Rebecca had received $67,000 from me in 18 months. Michael was up to $93,000 over 2 years. Jessica, living rent-free in my basement while I covered her food, utilities, health insurance, and various artistic pursuits, represented about $40,000 annually in direct support. In total, I was spending nearly $200,000 a year supporting my adult children. My pension and investment income could handle it, but it meant I was essentially living paycheck to paycheck while my kids lived quite comfortably on my dime. More troubling was their complete lack of gratitude or acknowledgement of the sacrifices I was making. Rebecca would call to complain that the check for Emma's camp was late, as if I was some kind of trust fund administrator rather than her mother who was choosing to help. Michael talked about our cryptocurrency business as if my financial contributions made us equal partners, despite the fact that he'd never consulted me on any business decisions. Jessica treated my house like a free hotel, complete with maid, service, and catering. The breaking point came in early May. I'd been experiencing chest pains for a few weeks but had been putting off going to the doctor. Old habits from the military. You tough it out, you don't complain. You certainly don't inconvenience others with your problems. But when I collapsed in my kitchen while making breakfast, Jessica found me unconscious on the floor and called. The emergency room doctor took one look at my EKG results and immediately admitted me. Severe coronary artery disease, he explained to my children who had all rushed to the hospital. 3 major blockages that required immediate surgery. Without intervention, I could have another heart attack at any time, and the next one might be fatal. We need to schedule her for a triple bypass as soon as possible, Dr. Martinez told my family. This is serious, but it's also very treatable. She's in good physical condition otherwise, and I expect a full recovery. I remember lying in that hospital bed, surrounded by machines and wires, watching my children process this information. Rebecca immediately started asking about my insurance coverage and whether I had all my legal documents in order. Michael wanted to know if I'd be able to help him with his business expenses while I was recovering. Jessica seemed genuinely upset, but even she was worried about what would happen if something happened to me before she got her life together. None of them asked how I was feeling. None of them held my hand or told me they loved me. They were already planning for my absence, already calculating how my medical situation would affect their own lives. "Don't worry about anything, Mom," Rebecca said in her most professional voice. "We'll take care of everything while you're in surgery and recovering. You just focus on getting better." At the time, I thought she meant they'd take care of me. I had no idea they meant they'd take care of my assets. The surgery was scheduled for the following Monday. I spent the weekend in the hospital, undergoing various tests and preparations, while my children supposedly organized my affairs so I wouldn't have to worry about anything during my recovery. Rebecca took charge naturally, since she was the oldest and had the most business experience. Michael and Jessica deferred to her judgment on everything. They brought me papers to sign, medical directives, temporary power of attorney documents, insurance forms. Rebecca explained each one briefly, but I was groggy from pre-surgery medications, and honestly, I trusted them. These were my children. They loved me. They wanted what was best for me. I signed everything they put in front of me the morning of my surgery. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, I saw my 3 children huddled together in the hallway, speaking in low, urgent voices. Rebecca had a folder full of documents, Michael was taking notes on his phone, and Jessica looked uncomfortable but wasn't speaking up about whatever they were discussing. "I love you all," I called out as the gurney passed them. "Love you too, Mom," they replied in unison, but they didn't stop their conversation or even really look at me. As the anesthesia took hold, my last conscious thought was wondering why my children seemed more interested in their paperwork than in saying goodbye to their mother who was about to undergo major surgery. I woke up 12 hours later to the steady beeping of heart monitors and the dull ache of surgical incisions. The surgery had been successful, Dr. Martinez told me. All 3 blockages had been cleared, new grafts were functioning perfectly, and my heart was already showing improved blood flow. I'd need several weeks of recovery, but I should be able to return to normal activities within a couple of months. "Where are my children?" I asked, noticing the empty chairs around my bed. "They've been here on and off," the nurse replied. "I think they stepped out to get some coffee and make some phone calls. Should I page them?" "No, let them finish whatever they're doing," I said, though something felt wrong. My children should have been here when I woke up. They should have been the first faces I saw, the first voices I heard telling me everything was going to be okay. Instead, I was alone with machines and strangers, wondering why my family wasn't celebrating the fact that their mother had survived a life-threatening surgery. The truth began unraveling 3 days after my surgery, when I overheard Rebecca on the phone in the hospital hallway. I'd been sleeping fitfully, waking up every few hours from the combination of pain medication and the constant noise of medical equipment. During one of these groggy moments, I heard her voice through the partially open door, speaking in the clipped professional tone she used for business calls. "Yes, we need to expedite the property appraisal. My mother is recovering from major surgery, and we want everything valued and documented while she's incapacitated." There was a pause. "No. She signed the power of attorney documents. I have full legal authority to act on her behalf regarding all financial matters." My blood ran cold despite the warm blanket covering me. Property appraisal? Why would they need my house appraised unless they were planning to sell it? And why would they do that without discussing it with me first? I pretended to be asleep when Rebecca returned to my room, but my mind was racing. Over the next few hours, I caught fragments of hushed conversations between my children. Michael mentioned something about liquidating the portfolio, and Jessica asked about splitting everything. 3 ways. When I tried to ask direct questions about what they were discussing, they brushed me off with vague reassurances about handling everything so I could focus on recovery. By the fourth day, I was feeling strong enough to demand real answers. When all three children were present in my room, I looked each of them in the eye and asked point blank what they were planning. "Mom, you almost died," Rebecca said, sitting on the edge of my bed with her most sincere expression. "We realized that we need to make sure your affairs are properly organized in case something like this happens again. We're just being responsible." "What kind of organization are we talking about?" I pressed. Michael jumped in, his voice taking on that excited tone he used when pitching his business ideas. "We've been thinking about this logically, Mom. You're 54, you live alone in a huge house that's way too much for you to maintain, especially now with your heart condition. It makes more sense for you to downsize to something manageable." "Downsize to what, exactly?" "There's a beautiful senior living community about 20 minutes from here," Jessica added quickly. "It's not like a nursing home or anything scary. It's more like luxury apartments, but with medical staff on site and activities and meal plans. You'd have so much less to worry about." I stared at my youngest daughter, the one I'd been supporting for 3 years, the one who lived in my basement, rent-free, suggesting that I move to a senior living facility at 54 years old. "Jessica, I just had heart surgery. I'm not dying. I don't need to be warehoused somewhere." "Nobody's warehousing you, Mom," Rebecca said firmly. "We're talking about making smart financial decisions. Do you know how much equity you have in this house? With the real estate market the way it is right now, you could sell and have enough money to buy a nice condo outright, plus have several $100,000 left over for your retirement. Several $100,000 that you three would inherit. Eventually, you mean?" The silence that followed was deafening. Michael fidgeted with his phone. Jessica suddenly became very interested in the pattern on my hospital blanket. Rebecca maintained eye contact, but I could see the calculation in her expression. "Mom, that's not what this is about," Rebecca finally said. "We're thinking about your quality of life, your safety, your future. And I suppose you've already gotten the house appraised to determine exactly how much my quality of life is worth." Another uncomfortable silence. This time Michael broke first. "Look, Mom, we had to know what we were working with. The appraisal came in at $740,000. After paying off your remaining mortgage and closing costs, you'd net about $680,000. That's a lot of money to have just sitting there in real estate when you could be earning returns on it." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. They'd appraised my house without my knowledge, calculated my net worth, and were now presenting me with a sales pitch about my own life, as if I were some doddering old woman who couldn't make her own decisions. "What? About my investment accounts?" I asked quietly. Rebecca pulled out a folder, the same folder I'd seen her carrying the day of my surgery. "We've been reviewing everything. Your stock portfolio is worth about $340,000. You have $85,000 in various savings accounts. Your life insurance policy has a cash value of about $60,000. Combined with the house proceeds, you'd have just over $1 million to work with." She was rattling off my financial information like an accountant presenting a quarterly report. These weren't my children anymore. They were vultures in business suits, circling around what they saw as their inheritance. "And what would you suggest I do with this $1 million?" I asked. "Well," Michael said eagerly, "I've been doing some research on investment strategies for people in your situation. Conservative portfolios, steady returns, making sure your money lasts throughout your retirement. And actually, Mom, I have to tell you about this incredible opportunity." Here it comes, I thought. The real reason behind all this concern for my financial future. My cryptocurrency platform is about to launch Phase 2, and we're offering a limited investment opportunity to family and friends. If you put even $200,000 into the platform now, before we go public, you could see returns of 400 to 500% within 18 months. It's basically a guaranteed way to ensure your financial security forever. I looked at my son. This 30-year-old man who'd never held a steady job, never successfully completed a business venture, never shown any financial acumen whatsoever. And he was seriously suggesting I invest a fifth of my net worth in his cryptocurrency scheme. And what would Rebecca and Jessica get out of this arrangement? I asked. Mom, it's not like that, Jessica protested. We're all just worried about you. But if you want to know, Rebecca thought she could help manage your investment portfolio. She has experience with financial planning, and she could make sure you're getting the best returns. For a management fee, I assume. Rebecca had the decency to look slightly embarrassed. Well, yes, there would be a small management fee. That's standard practice. But Mom, I'd be saving you thousands in fees that you'd pay to a financial advisor who doesn't know you or care about your best interests. The picture was becoming crystal clear. Rebecca would manage my investments for a fee, Michael would get a massive injection of capital for his latest business venture, and Jessica would presumably get some kind of allowance or support system. From the remaining funds, they'd liquidate everything I'd worked for, park me in a senior living facility, and divide up the proceeds among themselves. All while I was still alive and perfectly capable of making my own decisions. Have you already put my house on the market? I asked. The guilty looks exchanged between my children told me everything I needed to know. We haven't officially listed it yet, Rebecca said carefully. But we did contact a real estate agent to get a market analysis and discuss timing. The agent thinks spring is the perfect time to sell, especially with the improvements you've made over the years. What improvements? The kitchen renovation, the new roof, the landscaping, the refinished hardwood floors. Michael ticked off items on his fingers. You've put a lot of money into that house, Mom. It's time to get some of that investment back. I had to close my eyes and take several deep breaths to keep from screaming. Those improvements had been made because I loved my house, because I was proud of it, because I planned to live there for the rest of my life. I hadn't renovated my kitchen as an investment strategy. I'd renovated it because I enjoyed cooking for my family when they visited. And where exactly am I supposed to live while you're selling my house and reorganizing my entire life? That's the beauty of the senior living community, Jessica said brightly. They have short-term respite care options for people recovering from surgery. You could stay there during your recovery period, see how much you like it, and by the time you're feeling better, your house would be sold, and you could make a permanent decision about where you want to live. They had it all figured out. Every detail planned, every contingency covered, every aspect of my future decided without my input. I was supposed to be grateful that my children were taking such good care of me. When did you contact this senior living place? We toured it yesterday, Rebecca admitted, just to see what options were available. They have a beautiful one-bedroom unit that would be perfect for you. It has a little kitchenette, a sitting area, and a lovely view of their gardens. All utilities included, housekeeping service, 3 meals a day in their dining room, and a full social calendar. You toured it yesterday, while I was in the hospital recovering from heart surgery. Mom, we were just being proactive, Michael said defensively. We wanted to have information ready so you could make an informed decision when you were feeling better. And what if I don't want to make any changes? What if I want to go home to my own house and recover in my own bedroom and cook in my own kitchen? The three of them exchanged another one of those looks, the kind of look that said they'd already discussed this possibility and had a plan for dealing with their unreasonable mother. Mom, Rebecca said in her most patient voice, the doctor said you need to avoid stress and exertion for at least 6 weeks. How are you going to manage a 4-bedroom house by yourself? Who's going to grocery shop for you? Cook for you? Help you with the stairs? What if you have another medical emergency when you're all alone? These were reasonable concerns, and if they'd been presented by loving children who wanted to help their mother recover, I might have been grateful for their thoughtfulness. But these weren't loving children. These were opportunists who saw my medical crisis as a chance to accelerate their inheritance timeline. I suppose you three are too busy to help me recover at home. Of course we'll help, Jessica said quickly. But we all have our own lives, our own responsibilities. Rebecca has Emma to think about. Michael has his business launch coming up. And I'm finally getting some traction with my photography work. We can't all just drop everything indefinitely. There it was. The truth finally spoken out loud. They were too busy with their own lives to care for their mother, but they weren't too busy to liquidate her assets and plan her future without her consent. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the hospital around me and thinking about the children I'd raised. Somewhere along the way, I'd failed them as a parent. I'd taught them to expect help without offering it in return. I'd shown them that Mom's money was always available for their problems, but Mom's problems were hers to handle alone. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Thomas Chen had been handling my legal affairs since my divorce 15 years earlier. He was thorough, discreet, and most importantly, he worked for me, not my children. When I explained what had been happening, his silence on the other end of the phone spoke volumes. "Maggie," he finally said, "I need to ask you a difficult question. Do you believe your children have your best interests at heart, or are they primarily concerned with their own financial gain?" "Tom, if they were concerned with my best interests, they would have asked me what I wanted instead of planning my entire future while I was unconscious in surgery. I'm going to need to see all the documents you signed, and I want to review exactly what authority you granted them through the power of attorney. Can you get copies of everything?" "I'll find a way." "Maggie, there's something else you need to know. If they've already contacted real estate agents and started the process of selling your house, they may be moving faster than you think. Power of attorney documents can be very broad, and if you weren't careful about the limitations—" "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to regain control of your own affairs immediately, before they make decisions that can't be easily undone." That afternoon, when Rebecca arrived for her daily visit, I asked to see the power of attorney documents I'd signed. She hesitated, claiming she'd left them at home, but I insisted. After some back and forth, she reluctantly pulled the papers from her briefcase. As I read through the legal language, my heart sank. In my medicated, trusting state, I'd signed documents giving Rebecca broad authority over my financial affairs. She could access my bank accounts, make investment decisions, and yes, even sell real estate on my behalf. The powers were supposed to be temporary and limited to my period of medical incapacity, but the definition of incapacity was vague enough to be interpreted broadly. "Rebecca," I said carefully, "according to this document, you could sell my house tomorrow if you wanted to. Mom, I would never do anything like that without talking to you first. But legally, you could." She didn't answer, which was answer enough. That evening, I made several phone calls from my hospital bed. First, I called Tom Chen and asked him to prepare documents immediately revoking the power of attorney I'd granted to Rebecca. Second, I called my primary bank and put a hold on any large transactions or account changes. Third, I made a call to a bank in Frankfurt, Germany, where I'd maintained an account since my deployment there 12 years earlier. "Guten Tag, Mrs. Sullivan," the bank representative said in accented English. "How may we assist you today?" "I need to make some transfers," I said quietly, glancing toward the door to make sure none of my children were approaching. "And I need to discuss expanding my banking relationship with your institution. If my children wanted to play financial games," about to learn that this particular mother had been planning for contingencies a lot longer than they had. The next morning brought a parade of visitors I hadn't expected. Rebecca arrived early, followed closely by a woman in an expensive suit, who introduced herself as Linda Morrison from Premier Real Estate Solutions. Behind them came Michael with a man carrying a briefcase who turned out to be some kind of financial advisor. And finally, Jessica trailing a representative from Sunset Manor Senior Living Community. "Mom, we thought it would be helpful for you to meet everyone in person," Rebecca said with forced cheerfulness. "Since you're feeling so much better, we can go ahead and make some concrete plans." I watched this circus unfold from my hospital bed, realizing that my children had orchestrated an entire presentation designed to pressure me into agreeing to their plans while I was still weak and medicated. It was a masterful manipulation. Surround the target with authority figures, create a sense of urgency, and make it seem like everyone agrees that this is the best course of action. Linda Morrison launched into a polished speech about market conditions and the exceptional value of my property. Mrs. Sullivan, your home is exactly what buyers are looking for right now. 4 bedrooms in Riverside, established neighborhood, excellent schools nearby. With the right marketing strategy, I believe we could have multiple offers within the first week. And what's your commission on a $740,000 sale? I asked bluntly. Linda looked momentarily flustered. Well, the standard commission is 6%, split between the listing and selling agents, but for a property of this caliber. So you'd make about $44,000 from selling my house. Mom, that's how real estate works, Rebecca interjected. Linda comes highly recommended, and her commission rate is completely standard. The financial advisor, a nervous man named Kevin Brandt, spread charts and graphs across my hospital table. Mrs. Sullivan, I've prepared several portfolio scenarios based on your current assets, plus the proceeds from your home sale. As you can see, a conservative investment approach would generate approximately $40,000 annually in passive income, which combined with your military pension should provide very comfortable retirement living. And what's your management fee? Our annual fee is 1.2% of assets under management, which is quite competitive in today's market. I did the math quickly. Kevin would earn about $12,000 per year for managing my money that I'd been managing myself quite successfully for the past decade. Between Linda's commission and Kevin's ongoing fees, these strangers would pocket over $50,000 in the first year alone, all thanks to my children's generous arrangements. The woman from Sunset Manor, a matronly type named Patricia Hendricks, had brought a glossy brochure and what appeared to be a pre-filled application. Mrs. Sullivan, I understand you're interested in our community. We happen to have had a cancellation for one of our premium units. It won't be available long in this market. I haven't expressed interest in your community, I said firmly. Oh, Patricia glanced nervously at Rebecca. I was told you were actively looking for senior living options. My children were looking. I wasn't consulted. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. I could see Rebecca's jaw tightening, Michael checking his phone anxiously, and Jessica fidgeting with her purse strap. Their carefully orchestrated presentation was falling apart. Mom, Rebecca said with strained patience, we're all here to help you make the best decisions for your future. These professionals have taken time out of their busy schedules to make money off my situation, I finished. Linda gets her commission, Kevin gets his management fees, Patricia gets her placement fee, and you 3 get to divide up what's left. Very efficient. That's not fair, Michael protested. We're thinking about your well-being. Are you? Then why didn't anyone ask what I actually want? The question hung in the air like smoke. Linda Morrison was studying her phone screen intently. Kevin Brandt had started gathering up his charts. Patricia Hendricks looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. What do you want, Mom? Jessica asked quietly. I want to go home. To my own house. I want to recover in my own bedroom, cook in my own kitchen when I'm able, and make my own decisions about my own life. But, Mom, you can't manage that house by yourself, especially with your heart condition, Rebecca argued. What if something happens? What if you fall down the stairs? What if you have another heart attack when nobody's around? It was a fair concern, and I had been thinking about it. Then I'll make arrangements for help. I'll hire a housekeeper, if I need one. I'll get a medical alert system. I'll make modifications to the house if necessary. But I'll do it on my terms, not because my children decided to liquidate my entire life while I was unconscious. Linda Morrison stood up abruptly. I think perhaps this isn't the right time for these discussions. Mrs. Sullivan, when you're feeling better and ready to explore your options, please don't hesitate to call. She handed me her card and practically fled from the room. Kevin Brandt, was close behind her. "Mrs. Sullivan, I'll leave my materials with you to review at your leisure. There's no pressure to make any immediate decisions." He packed up his charts and graphs with obvious relief. Patricia Hendricks lingered a moment longer. "Mrs. Sullivan, I want you to know that Sunset Manor would welcome you whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready. We don't pressure anyone into our community. It has to be the right choice for the individual." She shot a disapproving look at my children before following the others out. Once we were alone, the real conversation began. "Mom, you're being completely unreasonable," Rebecca said, dropping her professional demeanor. "We're trying to help you and you're acting like we're attacking you. Because you are attacking me. You planned my entire future without consulting me. You had my house appraised, contacted real estate agents, toured senior living facilities, and brought in financial advisors, all while I was in the hospital recovering from surgery. We were being proactive," Michael insisted. "We were trying to have solutions ready so you wouldn't have to stress about these decisions while you're recovering. Solutions to problems I didn't know I had. Michael, I'm 54 years old, not 84. I don't need to be managed like some confused, elderly person." "But Mom," Jessica said, tears starting to form in her eyes, "we almost lost you. When I found you on the kitchen floor, I thought you were dead. We can't go through that again." For a moment, I softened. Jessica's fear was genuine, and I understood it. But fear didn't justify what they'd done. "Jessie, I understand you were scared. I was scared too. But the solution isn't to dismantle my entire life. It's to make sure I take better care of my health and have appropriate support systems in place." "What kind of support systems?" Rebecca asked skeptically. "I don't know yet. That's something I need to figure out for myself. Maybe I do need some help with housekeeping and maintenance. Maybe I should consider a smaller house eventually. Maybe I need to make some lifestyle changes. But those are my decisions to make." "And what if you make the wrong decisions?" Michael asked. "What if you're too stubborn or too proud to admit you need help? Then I'll face the consequences of my own choices, just like I've been doing for 54 years. My children exchanged those looks again, the ones that excluded me from their silent communication. Finally, Rebecca spoke. "Mom, we need to talk. About the power of attorney documents you signed. What about them?" "Well, legally, I have the authority to make financial decisions on your behalf while you're incapacitated, and the doctors did say you need several weeks of recovery." The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Rebecca was suggesting that she could still move forward with their plans, regardless of my objections, by claiming I was still medically incapacitated. "Rebecca, are you threatening me?" "I'm not threatening you, Mom. I'm just pointing out that sometimes family members have to make difficult decisions for their loved ones who aren't thinking clearly due to medical trauma and medication." My daughter was essentially calling me mentally incompetent. This decorated Army sergeant who'd served 3 combat tours, managed complex military operations, and successfully handled her own finances for decades was being told she wasn't capable of making her own decisions. "Get out," I said quietly. "Mom, all of you, get out of my room. Now." "Mom, you're upset. Let's talk about this rationally," Michael tried. "I am being rational. I'm rationally telling my children to leave because they've made it clear they don't respect me, don't trust my judgment, and see me as nothing more than an obstacle to their inheritance." "That's not true," Jessica protested, but she was already gathering her purse. "Isn't it? Tell me one thing any of you have said or done in the past week that puts my interests ahead of your own financial gain." None of them could answer that question. After they left, I lay in that hospital bed feeling more alone than I had since my divorce 15 years earlier. But alongside the loneliness was something else. A cold, clear anger that reminded me of how I'd felt during combat missions when everything depended on tactical thinking and decisive action. I called Tom Chen first. Tom, I need those power of attorney revocation documents prepared immediately. And I need you to send copies to my bank, my investment firm, and anyone else who might have been contacted by my children. Already working on it, Maggie. I should have everything ready by this afternoon. But I have to warn you, your children may not give up easily. If they've already invested time and money in appraising your property and making arrangements, let me worry about my children. Just make sure they can't access my accounts or make any decisions on my behalf. Done. Anything else? Yes. I need you to research something for me. What are the legal requirements for proving financial elder? Abuse? Tom was quiet for a moment. Maggie, are you saying your children are financially abusing you? I'm saying they attempted to take control of my assets while I was vulnerable, without my knowledge or consent. They made plans to liquidate my property and reorganize my finances for their benefit. If that's not financial abuse, what is? I'll research it and get back to you. But Maggie, these cases can get very ugly, especially when family is involved. Tom, I spent 22 years in the Army. I know ugly. I also know how to fight when I need to. My next call was to Germany. Mrs. Sullivan, I was hoping to hear from you, Klaus Weber said in his precise English. I have been reviewing your account and preparing the transfer authorizations you requested. Klaus, I need to accelerate the timeline. Can you have the funds transferred today? Certainly, but may I ask if there is some urgency to this matter? Let's just say I need to make sure certain assets are secure. I understand completely. Mrs. Sullivan, given the amounts involved, would you consider expanding your relationship with our institution? We offer comprehensive wealth management services for our international clients. What kind of services? Investment management, estate planning, tax optimization strategies. We have clients in similar situations who have found it beneficial to maintain a more discreet financial profile. Klaus was offering me something my children hadn't even considered: real wealth management that prioritized my interests over someone else's commission structure. More importantly, he was offering me privacy and control. Set up a meeting for next week. I'll be discharged from the hospital in a few days. Excellent. I will arrange to fly to New York to meet with you. Personally. After hanging up, I made one more call, this one to a number I hadn't dialed in over a year. Sergeant Major Williams speaking. Sam, it's Maggie Sullivan. Well, I'll be damned. Maggie Sullivan, how the hell are you? Sam Williams had been my top sergeant during my last deployment. He'd retired from the Army 6 months before me and started a private security consulting firm. We'd kept in touch sporadically over the years. I'm in the hospital, Sam, heart surgery. But that's not why I'm calling. What do you need? I'd always appreciated Sam's directness. No small talk, no dancing around issues, just straight to the point. I need information on private investigators who specialize in financial investigations. Specifically, people who can document and track financial transactions and communications. Jesus, Maggie. What kind of trouble are you in? The kind where family members think they can take advantage of someone they perceive as vulnerable. Your kids? My kids. Sam was quiet for a moment. You know, I've seen this before. Military families where the kids grow up thinking mom and dad's benefits and pension are their birthright. It's ugly stuff. Can you help me? I can do better than that. I can personally handle this for you. My firm does a lot of financial investigation work. We're licensed, bonded, and we know how to document everything properly for legal proceedings. Sam, I don't want to put you in an awkward position. Maggie, you once covered my ass in Kandahar when I made a tactical error that could have gotten people killed. I owe you more than I can ever repay. This isn't an awkward position, it's an honor. We talked for another 20 minutes, with Sam explaining exactly what kind of evidence would be useful and how quickly he could gather it. By the time I hung up, I had a comprehensive plan for documenting everything my children had done and said over the past week. As evening approached, I felt more like myself than I had since the surgery. The fog of medication was lifting, my mind was sharp, and I was back in tactical mode. My children thought they were dealing with a helpless, confused woman who could be manipulated and managed. They were about to discover they'd been planning an assault on a combat veteran who'd been thinking 3 moves ahead since before they were born. The next morning brought flowers and apologies. Rebecca arrived first, carrying an enormous bouquet of roses and wearing her most contrite expression. "Mom, I want to apologize for yesterday. I think we all got carried away with trying to help, and we didn't handle it well." "Carried away? We should have talked to you first before contacting any outside people. That was wrong, and I'm sorry." Michael appeared next with a box of chocolates and a hangdog expression. "Mom, I feel terrible about how everything went down yesterday. The last thing I wanted was to stress you out while you're recovering." Jessica brought me a framed photograph she'd taken of a sunset over a lake, along with tears and trembling hands. "Mom, I can't believe we made you feel like we were attacking you. We love you so much, and we just want what's best for you." I accepted their gifts and apologies with polite thanks, but I was watching carefully. This was damage control, not genuine remorse. They'd regrouped overnight and decided on a new strategy: make Mom feel guilty for not trusting their good intentions. "I appreciate the apologies," I said carefully, "but I need to understand something. Are you apologizing for the way you handled things, or are you apologizing for the things themselves?" "What do you mean?" Rebecca asked. "I mean, are you sorry that you had my house appraised without my knowledge, or are you just sorry that I found out about it in an awkward way?" Another of those uncomfortable silences. "Mom, we were just trying to gather information," Michael said finally. "We weren't going to do anything without talking to you." "But you did do things without talking to me. You got the appraisal, you contacted the real estate agent, you toured the senior living facility, you brought in financial advisors. Those weren't information-gathering activities, those were implementation activities." "Okay, maybe we got a little ahead of ourselves," Rebecca admitted. "But Mom, our hearts were in the right place." "Were they? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your hearts were in your wallets." The mask slipped for just a moment. Rebecca's jaw tightened, Michael's eyes flashed with frustration, and Jessica looked away guiltily. "That's not fair, Mom," Rebecca said with forced calm. "Everything we discussed would benefit you financially. You'd have more liquid assets, less maintenance responsibility, more security. And what would you 3 get out of it?" "We'd get peace of mind knowing you're safe and secure," Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Would you? Or would you get the satisfaction of knowing that your inheritance is no longer tied up in a liquid real estate?" "Mom, why are you being so cynical?" Jessica asked tearfully. "Why can't you believe that we're worried about you?" "Because worried children ask their parent what she needs. Greedy children make plans for their parent's assets while she's unconscious in surgery. The truth hung in the air between us like a challenge. My children could continue pretending this was about my welfare, or they could finally be honest about their motivations. Rebecca chose a third option: deflection. "Mom, I think the stress and medication are making you paranoid. You're seeing conspiracies where there aren't any. Maybe you should talk to someone, a counselor or therapist, about processing the trauma of your surgery." My eldest daughter was now suggesting I was mentally unstable. It was a clever move. If I was having psychological problems due to medical trauma, then my objections to their plans could be dismissed as irrational. "Rebecca, I'm thinking more clearly now than I have in years, and what I'm seeing clearly is that my children view me as a resource to be managed rather than a person to be respected." "That's ridiculous," Michael protested. "We respect you, Mom. We just think—" "You think what?" "We think you're not being realistic about what you can handle at your age with your health condition." There it was. My 29-year-old son, who'd never successfully managed his own finances, was telling me I wasn't capable of managing mine. I looked at each of my children, these adults I'd raised and supported and loved unconditionally, and I made a decision that would change everything. I want all three of you to leave now. I don't want any more visits, any more phone calls, any more contact until I'm discharged from the hospital and have had time to think about our relationship. Mom, you can't be serious, Jessica pleaded. I'm completely serious. You've made your feelings about my competence very clear. You've made your plans for my future very clear. Now I need space to make my own plans. What kind of plans? Rebecca asked suspiciously. I smiled at my eldest daughter, the same smile I'd used on enemy, combatants who'd underestimated what they were facing. The kind of plans that a competent, mentally stable adult makes when she discovers that her own children have been plotting against her. The silence that followed my ultimatum was broken only by the steady beeping of my heart monitor. My children stood frozen, apparently trying to process that their supposedly vulnerable mother had just dismissed them like insubordinate soldiers. Mom, you're making a mistake, Rebecca said, her composure finally cracking. You need us right now. You can't handle everything on your own. Watch me, I replied calmly. Michael stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. This is insane, Mom. We're your family. We're trying to help you, and you're treating us like enemies. You made yourselves my enemies when you decided to plan my life without me. When you had strangers appraising my property while I was fighting for my life in surgery. When you brought financial vultures to my hospital room to pressure me into decisions that benefit everyone except me. Those people weren't vultures, Rebecca snapped. They were professionals trying to help you maximize your financial position. Professionals. Who would have earned substantial fees from implementing your plan? Rebecca, I wasn't born yesterday. I know exactly what was happening in that room. Jessica, who had been crying quietly, suddenly exploded. Fine. You want to be alone? You want to push away the only people who care about you? Go ahead. But don't come running to us when you're lying on your kitchen floor again with no one to help you. The venom in my youngest daughter's voice shocked me. This was the child I'd been supporting for 3 years, the one who lived in my house rent-free, and she was threatening to abandon me if I didn't submit to their financial management. Jessica, I won't need to come running to you. I'll make other arrangements. What other arrangements? Michael demanded. Who else is going to take care of you? Who else is going to worry about what happens to you? People who actually care about my well-being instead of my bank account. That's not fair, Rebecca shouted, losing control completely. We do care about your well-being, but we also have to be practical. We also have to think about the future. Whose future? Mine or yours? The question hung in the air like an accusation. My children exchanged those meaningful looks again, but this time I could read them clearly. They were deciding whether to continue the charade or finally admit what this was really about. Michael chose honesty, or at least his version of it. Okay, Mom, you want the truth? Yes. We were thinking about our future too. Is that so wrong? You're not going to live forever, and when something happens to you, we're going to inherit whatever's left. Is it wrong for us to want to make sure that inheritance is managed properly? So you decided to manage it while I'm still alive. We decided to help you manage it more efficiently, Rebecca corrected. Mom, you've got money sitting in low-yield savings accounts when it could be earning real returns. You've got all your wealth tied up in a house that requires constant maintenance and upkeep. From a financial planning perspective, your current situation makes no sense. From whose financial planning perspective? Yours or mine? From any rational financial planner's perspective, Michael insisted. Mom, we're not trying to steal from you. We're trying to help you optimize your resources so there's more for everyone. The truth was finally emerging. They weren't concerned about my quality of life or my safety. They were concerned about maximizing their eventual inheritance and getting access to it as soon as possible. And what if I don't want to optimize my resources for everyone? What if I want to live in my own house, manage my own money, and make my own decisions about what happens to my wealth when I die? Then you're being selfish, Jessica said bitterly. You're being selfish and stubborn, and you're punishing us for caring about you. I stared at my youngest daughter, the one whose college tuition I'd paid, whose car I'd bought, whose rent and groceries and health insurance I'd been covering for years, and she was calling me selfish for wanting to control my own life. Get out, I said quietly. All of you, get out now and don't come back. Mom, you're making a huge mistake, Rebecca warned. If you push us away, you'll be all alone. No one else is going to put up with your stubbornness. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who see me as a financial opportunity. We're your children, Michael protested. We love you. No, you love my money. If you loved me, you would have asked me what I wanted instead of planning my entire future while I was unconscious. They left finally, but not without slamming doors and muttering threats about how sorry I'd be when I needed them. The hospital room felt peaceful for the first time since my surgery. I called Tom Chen immediately. Tom, I need you to accelerate everything. The power of attorney revocation, account protections, everything. Maggie, what happened? I gave him a brief summary of the confrontation with my children. When I finished, Tom was quiet for a long moment. Maggie, I have to ask this directly. Do you believe your children might try to have you declared mentally incompetent? The question hit me like a physical blow. What? It's a common tactic in financial elder abuse cases. If they can convince a court that you're not mentally capable of making financial decisions, they could potentially override your revocation of the power of attorney. On what grounds? Medical trauma, medication effects, age-related cognitive decline, depression following surgery. There are lots of angles they could pursue, especially if they can find a doctor willing to support their claims. I thought about Rebecca's suggestion that I needed counseling for paranoia and stress-related mental health issues. She'd been laying groundwork. What do I need to do to protect myself? First, we need independent medical and psychological evaluations proving your mental competency. Second, we need to document everything they've done and said. Third, we need to move quickly to secure your assets before they can make any legal challenges. I'm already working on the documentation, and I have some assets they don't know about. What kind of assets? Offshore accounts. Legitimate, properly reported, but completely outside their knowledge or control. How much are we talking about? About $1.2 million across 3 accounts in Germany, South Korea, and Japan. Tom whistled softly. Maggie, that changes everything. With that kind of backup, you have tremendous leverage. But it also means the stakes are much higher for your children if they're planning to contest your competency. What do you mean? I mean, if they succeed in having you declared incompetent, they'd gain control of those accounts too, once they discover them. We're talking about potentially doubling their inheritance. The implications were staggering. My children had been planning to liquidate over $1 million in domestic assets, but they had no idea there was another $1.2 million sitting in international accounts. If they gained legal control over my finances, they wouldn't just be stealing my house and investments, they'd be stealing my entire life's work. Tom, I need those competency evaluations immediately. I'll set them up for tomorrow. Independent neurologist, psychologist, and internist. All highly credible, all willing to testify if necessary. Good. What else? I'm going to recommend that you consider transferring more of your domestic assets offshore, at least temporarily, to keep them out of reach if your children file any legal challenges. How quickly can that be done? If you're willing to move fast and pay the fees, we could have major transfers completed within 48 hours. Do it. After I hung up with Tom, I called Sam Williams. Sam, I need that investigation started immediately. My children just revealed their true motivations, and I think they might be planning to challenge my mental competency. Jesus, Maggie, How bad did it get? Bad enough that they're talking about my stubbornness and suggesting I need psychological counseling for paranoia. I think they're building a case. Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm placing surveillance on all 3 of your children starting today. Phone records, financial records, communication monitoring, the works. If they're planning legal action, we'll know about it before they file papers. Is that legal? Everything we do will be completely legal and admissible in court. We're not hacking anything or violating privacy rights. We're just very good at finding public records and connecting dots. How long will it take? I'll have preliminary findings within 24 hours, full report within a week. Sam, there's something else. I have offshore accounts my children don't know about $1.2 million. Smart woman. Military training. Pays off. Are those accounts secure? For now. But if they succeed in having me declared incompetent, they'd gain access to everything. Got it. Maggie, I'm going to recommend something that might sound extreme. What? Consider disappearing for a while. Not permanently, but long enough to get your affairs organized and your legal protections in place. If your children can't find you, they can't serve you with legal papers or force you into medical evaluations. Where would I go? You've got friends in Germany, right? From your military service? Yes, but Maggie, you're a veteran with legitimate business overseas. You could fly to Germany for banking meetings, medical consultations, whatever you want to call it. Stay there for a month while we build your case and secure your assets. The idea was appealing, but seemed extreme. Then I remembered the venom in Jessica's voice, the calculating look in Rebecca's eyes, and Michael's naked greed when he talked about optimizing resources. Set it up, I said. That evening, Dr. Martinez stopped by for his final check before my discharge. Mrs. Sullivan, I have to say, your recovery has been remarkable. Your heart function is excellent. Incision sites are healing perfectly, and your overall condition is better than I expected. When can I go home? Tomorrow morning, if you'd like. But I do want to discuss your discharge planning. Your children mentioned some concerns about your living situation. I felt my blood pressure spike. What kind of concerns? Well, they suggested that you might benefit from some additional support during your recovery. They mentioned looking into assisted living options. Dr. Martinez, did my children ask you to evaluate my mental competency? The doctor looked uncomfortable. They expressed some concerns about your decision-making capacity, yes. They mentioned that you seemed confused and paranoid about their efforts to help you. And what's your professional opinion about my mental state? Mrs. Sullivan, you seem perfectly lucid and competent to me. Your cognitive function is normal, your responses are appropriate, and you're making reasonable decisions about your care. Would you be willing to document that assessment? If necessary, yes. Is there some kind of legal issue I should be aware of? There might be. My children are planning to challenge my right to make my own financial decisions. Dr. Martinez frowned. Mrs. Sullivan, that would be very difficult to support medically. You've shown no signs of cognitive impairment, depression, or any other condition that would affect your decision-making capacity. Would you testify to that if required? Absolutely. And Mrs. Sullivan, I want you to know that several of my colleagues have commented on how impressed they've been with your mental acuity and emotional stability throughout this process. You've been one of our most rational and cooperative patients. This was exactly what Tom Chen had said I'd need. Multiple medical professionals willing to attest to my mental competency. The next morning, I was discharged from the hospital, with strict instructions to take it easy for the next few weeks, but no restrictions on my mental or legal capacity. Tom Chen met me at the hospital with a wheelchair, a briefcase full of documents, and a grim expression. Maggie, we need to talk immediately. My investigators found some troubling information. What kind of information? Your children have already retained a lawyer, someone who specializes in elder law and competency proceedings. My heart sank. How do you know? Public records. The law firm filed preliminary paperwork yesterday requesting medical records related to your hospitalization. What does that mean? It means they're moving faster than we expected. They're already building a case to have you declared incompetent. Based on what? According to the filing, they're claiming you're suffering from post-surgical depression, medication-induced paranoia, and age-related cognitive decline that's affecting your judgment. I'm 54 years old, Tom. That's hardly age-related cognitive decline. I know, but they're arguing that your military service exposed you to traumatic brain injuries that are now manifesting as poor decision-making and paranoid behavior. It was a clever strategy. My military medical records would show the standard bumps and bruises that came with combat service, and any lawyer could spin those into evidence of long-term neurological effects. How long do I have? They could file the competency petition as early as next week. Once they do, there will be court hearings, medical evaluations, and potentially a temporary guardianship that would freeze your assets. What are my options? Fight it in court, which could take months and cost hundreds of thousands in legal fees. Or what? Or we implement the contingency plan Sam suggested. You leave the country temporarily, transfer the majority of your assets offshore, and fight this battle from a position of strength rather than vulnerability. I thought about my house, my life in Connecticut, my community connections. Leaving meant giving up everything familiar and comfortable. But staying meant potentially losing everything I'd worked for to children who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to their inheritance. When would I need to leave? Today. This afternoon. Sam has contacts who can expedite travel documents and arrange secure transportation. What about my house? We'll arrange for property management and security. Everything will be maintained. In your absence. And the offshore transfers? Already in progress. By the time you land in Germany, the majority of your liquid assets will be beyond your children's reach. I looked out the window of Tom's car at the familiar streets of my hometown, wondering if this was the last time I'd see them as a free woman. My children had forced me into a choice between exile and financial captivity. Make the arrangements, I said finally. If my children want to play hardball, they're about to learn that their mother didn't survive 3 combat tours by backing down from a fight. Tom nodded grimly. Maggie, there's one more thing you should know. What? Sam's preliminary investigation found evidence that your children have been planning this for months, possibly since before your surgery. What kind of evidence? Email exchanges discussing your declining mental state and the need to intervene before she makes any more poor decisions. Text messages about researching competency law and elder care attorneys. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. My children hadn't just taken advantage of my medical crisis. They'd been planning to steal my autonomy long before I ever set foot in a hospital. Tom, I want them to pay for this. They will, Maggie. When we're done, they'll wish they'd never underestimated what happens when you corner a combat veteran. As we drove toward the airport, I made one final call to Klaus Weber in Germany. Klaus, it's Margaret Sullivan. I'm coming to Frankfurt today, and I'm bringing everything with me. The flight to Frankfurt gave me 8 hours to process what my life had become in the span of a single week. 7 days ago, I'd been a retired Army sergeant living peacefully in Connecticut, proud of the children I'd raised and the comfortable life I'd built. Now I was fleeing the country to protect my assets from those same children who were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. Klaus Weber met me at Frankfurt International Airport personally, something I hadn't expected. He was a distinguished man in his 60s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of precise mannerisms I associated with German efficiency. Mrs. Sullivan, welcome to Germany. I trust your flight was comfortable? As comfortable as any flight can be when you're running from your own family, I replied. Klaus nodded sympathetically. I have been managing international accounts for 30 years, Mrs. Sullivan. Sadly, your situation is not as uncommon as one might hope. Shall we proceed directly to the bank? The ride through Frankfurt was surreal. I'd been stationed here 12 years earlier, but returning under these circumstances made everything feel foreign and uncertain. Klaus filled the silence with updates on the transfers that had been processing during my flight. Your attorney, Mr. Chen, has been most efficient. We have successfully received $847,000 from your various American accounts. Combined with your existing balances, you now have approximately $2.1 million under management with our institution. What about my house and the remaining investments? Those transfers are more complex due to real estate and tax implications. However, we have established credit facilities secured by those assets, which gives you immediate access to liquidity while keeping the underlying properties protected. It was a sophisticated financial strategy that my children's simple-minded approach to liquidating everything couldn't have conceived. Instead of selling assets at potentially disadvantageous prices, I was borrowing against them at favorable rates while maintaining ownership and control. The Frankfurter Private Bank occupied an entire block of a historic building in the financial district. Klaus led me through marble corridors lined with oil paintings of stern-looking German bankers from centuries past. His office overlooked the main river, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made me feel like I was sitting inside a European postcard. Mrs. Sullivan, before we discuss specific financial strategies, I want to address the legal situation you described. Our institution has extensive experience protecting clients from frivolous competency challenges. What kind of experience? We maintain relationships with international law firms that specialize in cross-border asset protection. More importantly, we have medical facilities here in Frankfurt that provide comprehensive evaluations for our clients who face such challenges. Klaus slid a folder across his desk. Inside were brochures for what appeared to be a private medical clinic affiliated with the University of Frankfurt. Dr. Helena Richter is one of Europe's leading experts in neurological and psychological assessment. She has evaluated hundreds of individuals facing competency challenges, and her reports are recognized by courts throughout the United States. You're suggesting I get evaluated here? I'm suggesting you get evaluated by someone who has no financial interest in the outcome and no relationship with the parties challenging your competency. Dr. Richter's assessment would carry significant weight in any American court proceeding. It made perfect sense. Instead of fighting my children's challenge with defensive measures, I could present overwhelming evidence of my mental acuity from internationally recognized experts. Set up the appointment. Already done. Dr. Richter can see you tomorrow morning. She understands the urgency of your situation. Klaus opened another folder, this one containing what appeared to be real estate listings. Mrs. Sullivan, given the uncertain timeline for your return to the United States, I took the liberty of researching accommodation options. Frankfurt has an excellent selection of furnished corporate apartments for extended stays. The listings showed luxury apartments in the city center, all fully furnished and available for month-to-month rental. One caught my attention immediately. A 2-bedroom unit overlooking the river, with a study that would work perfectly as a home office. This one, I said, pointing to the listing. Excellent choice. The building has 24-hour security concierge services and is within walking distance of our bank. I can have you moved in this afternoon. While Klaus handled the apartment arrangements, I called Sam Williams from a secure phone line the bank provided. Maggie, thank God you made it safely. Things are moving fast here. What's happening? Your children filed their competency petition this morning. They're claiming you disappeared because you're having a psychotic break brought on by post-surgical trauma. A psychotic break? According to their filing, your irrational paranoia about their attempts to help you, combined with your sudden disappearance, proves that you're not mentally capable of managing your affairs. The audacity was breathtaking. They'd driven me out of the country with their schemes, and now they were using my departure as evidence of mental illness. What's the timeline? Emergency hearing scheduled for Friday. They're asking for immediate temporary guardianship and asset freezing. Can they get it? Not if we can prove you're competent and their claims are fabricated. But Maggie, I have to tell you, their lawyer is good. He's painted a very compelling picture of a confused elderly woman being taken advantage of by foreign banking interests. Elderly? I'm 54. I know, but in legal terms, anyone over 50 can be considered vulnerable to elder abuse. And they're claiming that your military service caused traumatic brain injuries that are now affecting your judgment. It was the same strategy Tom Chen had warned me about, but seeing it implemented was infuriating. Sam, what evidence do they have? Medical records from your Army service showing multiple concussions and blast exposures. Testimony from all 3 children about your increasingly erratic behavior over the past year. Financial records showing what they claim are impulsive and irrational money transfers to foreign accounts. What about evidence of their real motivations? That's where things get interesting. I found email exchanges between Rebecca and Michael, discussing how to accelerate Mom's transition to managed care and maximize the value of her estate while she's still alive. That sounds pretty damning. It would be, except their lawyer is spinning it as evidence of their loving concern for your welfare. He's arguing that they were trying to protect you from making poor financial decisions. What about the real estate appraisal and all the arrangements they made without telling me? Same spin. They were being proactive in researching options for your care and financial security. It was masterful legal manipulation, taking every piece of evidence of their greed and self-interest and reframing. It is concern for my well-being. Sam, I need ammunition. What kind of evidence would prove their real motivations? Financial records showing how they would benefit from your incapacity. Communications discussing their inheritance expectations. Evidence that they were planning. This before your medical crisis. And you found that kind of evidence? Some of it. But Maggie, I need you to think carefully about something. Do you really want to destroy your relationships with your children permanently? The question caught me off guard. In all the strategic planning and legal maneuvering, I hadn't fully processed the emotional reality of what was happening. If I fought this battle to its conclusion, there would be no going back. My children would never forgive me for exposing their greed and defeating their plans. Sam, they've already destroyed our relationship. They chose money over family. I'm just refusing to be their victim. I understand. But once we release this evidence, once we prove they were motivated by greed rather than concern, there's no repairing that damage. Then they should have thought about that before they tried to steal my life. Okay, I'll compile everything and send it to Tom Chen for the Friday hearing. After hanging up, I sat in Klaus's office staring out at the Frankfurt skyline, thinking about the 3 children I'd raised and wondering where I'd gone wrong. Had I been too generous? Too supportive? Had I somehow taught them that my role in their lives was purely financial? Mrs. Sullivan, Klaus said gently, I hope you don't mind my observation, but you seem troubled by more than just legal and financial concerns. I'm wondering how I raised children who could do this to me. Klaus nodded thoughtfully. In my experience, Mrs. Sullivan, children who view their parents primarily as financial resources have usually been taught that dynamic through years of conditional support. What do you mean? Parents who consistently solve their adult children's problems with money, who rescue them from consequences, who measure their love through financial generosity. They often inadvertently teach their children that the relationship is transactional. The observation stung because it was accurate. I had been solving my children's problems with money for years. Every failed business venture, every financial crisis, every expensive want or need, I'd written checks instead of letting them face consequences. So this is my fault? Mrs. Sullivan, you gave your children opportunities and support. What they did with those gifts reflects their character, not yours. A person of good character would be grateful for such generosity and would never consider exploiting the giver's vulnerability. But maybe if I'd been different? Mrs. Sullivan, may I share something personal? I nodded. I have 3 children of my own. When they were young adults, I helped them financially whenever they asked. I paid for their education, their housing, their business ventures. I thought I was being a good father. What happened? They began to see me as a source of funding rather than a source of wisdom or love. When I became ill several years ago and could no longer be as generous, they lost interest in me. They visit occasionally, usually when they need something, but the genuine affection is gone. Do you regret helping them? I regret not teaching them independence and gratitude. But I don't regret the love that motivated my generosity. Mrs. Sullivan, your children's greed is not a reflection of your love. It's a reflection of their character. That evening, I settled into my temporary apartment overlooking the Main River. The space was beautiful but impersonal, filled with expensive furniture that belonged to strangers. I ordered dinner from a nearby restaurant and sat by the window, watching boats navigate the river and thinking about the life I'd left behind. My phone rang around 9 p.m. Frankfurt time, 3 p.m. in Connecticut. Mom? It was Jessica, and she sounded, "Terrible. What do you want, Jessica? Mom, please come home. This whole thing has gotten out of control." What whole thing? The lawyers, the court papers, everything. I never wanted it to go this far. But you went along with it. I know, and I'm sorry. I was scared about what would happen to you, and Rebecca and Michael made it sound like we were helping you. Jessica, you called me selfish for wanting to live in my own house. You threatened to abandon me if I didn't go along with your plans. I was angry and scared. I said things I didn't mean. Did you mean it when you told the lawyers I was having a psychotic break? Jessica was quiet for a long moment. I didn't. No, they were going to say that. Rebecca told me they just needed examples of you acting differently than usual. And you gave them examples? I told them about you being suspicious of our help and refusing to consider the senior living place. I didn't know they would twist it into something that sounded crazy. Jessica, do you understand what you've done? You've provided evidence for a legal proceeding that could take away my right to control my own life. Can't you just come back and work things out with Rebecca and Michael? Maybe there's a compromise. The compromise is that I get to make my own decisions about my own life. That's not negotiable. But Mom, where are you? Are you safe? Are you taking care of yourself? For a moment, I heard genuine concern in my daughter's voice, the kind of worry a child should feel for a parent. But it was too little, too late. I'm fine, Jessica. I'm somewhere safe, and I'm taking very good care of myself. Will you come back for the court hearing? I'll be represented. At the court hearing. What does that mean? It means your lawyers are going to get a very unpleasant surprise when they try to prove I'm mentally incompetent. Mom, Rebecca says you've moved all your money to foreign accounts where we can't access it. And there it was. The real reason. For Jessica's call. Not concern for my well-being, but concern about access to my money. Jessica, why would you need to access my money? I don't mean it like that. I just meant, well, what if something happens to you? What if you need help and we can't? I mean, how would you pay for my care using my money, you mean? That's not what I'm saying. It's exactly what you're saying. Jessica, you're still thinking about my money as if it belongs to you. Mom, you're our inheritance. That money is supposed to be ours someday. The honesty was refreshing, even if it was devastating. Jessica, an inheritance is a gift, not a guarantee. And it's certainly not something you're entitled to while I'm still alive. But what if you spend it all? What if there's nothing left? Then you'll have to make your own way in the world, just like I did. That's not fair. We're your children. Being my child doesn't entitle you to my money. It should entitle you to my love, but you've made it clear that's not what you value. Jessica started crying. Mom, I do love you. I know I haven't shown it well, but I do. Jessica, if you love me, drop this legal challenge. Tell Rebecca and Michael to stop trying to have me declared incompetent. I can't do that. Rebecca says we've gone too far to back out now. She says if we don't follow through, you'll never trust us again anyway. And she's right. I won't. So what happens now? Now you'll find out what happens when you underestimate someone who spent 22 years in the army. Mom, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. You should be terrified of what you've done to our family. I hung up and sat in the darkness, looking out at the lights of Frankfurt and thinking about the 3 children who had once been the center of my world. Tomorrow, I would undergo comprehensive medical and psychological evaluation that would prove my mental competency, beyond any doubt. In 3 days, I would present evidence in an American courtroom that would expose my children's greed and defeat their legal challenge. But tonight, I mourned the family I'd lost and the woman I used to be, the generous, trusting mother who had believed that love and sacrifice would be enough to earn her children's respect and loyalty. That woman was gone forever, replaced by someone harder and more strategic. Someone who understood that in this world, even family members would exploit your vulnerability if you let them. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of teaching my children exactly how expensive their greed was going to be. The hearing took place on a cold Friday morning in Connecticut, though I wasn't physically present. Tom Chen had arranged for me to participate via secure video link from the Frankfurt courthouse, surrounded by my legal team and medical experts. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. While my children sat in an American courtroom trying to prove I was mentally incompetent, I was conducting business internationally with the clarity and precision of someone completely in control. Rebecca. Michael and Jessica sat at the plaintiff's table with their lawyer, a slick-looking man named Richard Cromwell who specialized in elder law. They kept glancing at the video screen where my image appeared, clearly unsettled by my composed demeanor and professional surroundings. Your Honor, Cromwell began, we're here today because Mrs. Sullivan's family is deeply concerned about her mental state following traumatic surgery. Her sudden departure from the country, her paranoid accusations against her loving children, and her impulsive transfer of assets to foreign accounts all indicate severe psychological distress. Tom Chen stood to respond. Your Honor, my client isn't suffering from psychological distress. She's suffering from financial exploitation by her own children. We have extensive evidence that this competency challenge is motivated by greed, not concern. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Chen. I hope you have evidence to support it. We do, Your Honor. But first, let's address the competency question directly. Tom introduced Dr. Helena Richter via video link from Frankfurt. Her credentials were impeccable. Head of neuropsychology at University of Frankfurt Medical Center, 30 years of experience, author of textbooks on competency evaluation. Dr. Richter, you've conducted a comprehensive evaluation of Mrs. Sullivan over the past 3 days? Yes, Mr. Chen. Neurological testing, psychological assessment, cognitive function analysis, and psychiatric evaluation. Mrs. Sullivan's results are exceptional. Her mental acuity is in the 95th percentile for her age group. She shows no signs of cognitive decline, depression, or any condition that would affect her decision-making capacity. Cromwell tried to undermine the evaluation. Dr. Richter, isn't it convenient that Mrs. Sullivan chose to be evaluated by doctors in Germany rather than submitting to evaluation by American physicians? Mr. Cromwell, I've been conducting competency evaluations for 3 decades. I have no financial or personal interest in this case. My evaluation methods exceed American standards, and my findings are based on objective testing, not opinions or family testimony. The judge looked impressed. Mr. Cromwell, do you have any medical evidence to contradict Dr. Richter's findings? We have testimony from Mrs. Sullivan's children about her erratic behavior. That's not medical evidence, counsel. That's family opinion, and potentially biased family opinion. Tom Chen smiled and opened his briefcase. Your Honor, speaking of bias, We'd like to present evidence about the true motivations behind this competency challenge. What followed was devastating. Sam Williams had done his job thoroughly. Email chains between Rebecca and Michael discussing how to accelerate mom's asset liquidation. Text messages about researching maximum inheritance strategies. Phone records showing calls to elder law attorneys dating back 3 months before my surgery. The most damning piece was a recorded conversation between Rebecca and the real estate agent, where she discussed getting the old lady moved out quickly, so we can flip the property. My children's faces grew paler with each revelation. Jessica was openly crying. Michael was staring at his hands. Rebecca was whispering urgently to Cromwell, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Your Honor, Tom continued, Mrs. Sullivan's children had my house appraised, contacted financial advisors, toured senior living facilities, and planned her entire future without her knowledge or consent, all while she was recovering from life-saving surgery. This isn't love. It's exploitation. The judge reviewed the evidence with obvious disgust. Mr. Cromwell, this is one of the most blatant cases of financial elder abuse I've seen. Your clients attempted to liquidate their mother's assets while she was medically vulnerable, and when she refused to cooperate, they filed a frivolous competency challenge. Your Honor, my clients were genuinely concerned. Your clients were genuinely greedy. This petition is dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into potential criminal charges for financial elder abuse. Through the video link, I watched my children's world collapse. Rebecca was arguing with Cromwell. Michael was on his phone, probably calling his girlfriend. Jessica was sobbing into her hands, but I wasn't finished. Your Honor, I said from Frankfurt, I'd like to make a statement. Proceed, Mrs. Sullivan. For years, I supported my adult children financially because I loved them and wanted them to succeed. I paid for their education, their businesses, their living expenses, their children's needs. I never expected gratitude, but I did expect basic respect and honesty. I looked directly at the camera, knowing my children were watching on the courtroom screen. Instead, I discovered that they saw me as nothing more than a financial resource to be managed and eventually inherited. They planned my future without consulting me, attempted to liquidate my assets without my consent, and when I objected, they tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. Jessica looked up from her hands, meeting my eyes through the screen. Rebecca, Michael, Jessica, you've taught me a valuable lesson about the difference between conditional and unconditional love. My love for you was unconditional. Your love for me was entirely conditional on my financial usefulness. Mom, please, Jessica whispered, though the microphone barely picked it up. The offshore accounts you're so concerned about? They contain $2.1 million that you'll never see. I'm establishing a charitable foundation to support military veterans and their families, people who understand honor, loyalty, and sacrifice. Rebecca stood up abruptly. You can't do that. That money belongs to us. The judge banged his gavel. Ms. Davis, sit down. Mrs. Sullivan can do whatever she wants with her own money. As for my house and remaining assets, I continued, I'm putting everything in trust with instructions that none of my children receive any inheritance unless they can demonstrate 5 consecutive years of financial independence and community service. 5 years? Michael shouted. Mom, that's not fair. Neither was trying to steal my autonomy while I was recovering from heart surgery. The judge ended the hearing, but my story was just beginning. Over the next 6 months, I split my time between Frankfurt and a small apartment I rented in Asheville, North Carolina, far from my children and the toxic relationships they represented. Klaus Weber became not just my banker, but a genuine friend, helping me establish the Margaret Sullivan Veterans Foundation. We funded housing for homeless veterans, education scholarships for military families, and support programs for soldiers transitioning to civilian life. Dr. Richter introduced me to an international community of professionals who became my new social circle. I traveled throughout Europe, took art classes in Tuscany, learned to speak better German, and discovered interests I'd never had time to explore while supporting ungrateful children. My children tried to contact me repeatedly, but I maintained strict boundaries. Jessica eventually got a job and started therapy. Michael's cryptocurrency business failed, and he was forced to find real employment. Rebecca lost her high-paying job during corporate downsizing and struggled to maintain her expensive lifestyle without Mom's financial backup. 3 years later, I received a letter from Jessica. She'd been working as a social worker, helping elderly clients protect themselves from financial abuse. Her letter was full of genuine remorse and understanding of what she'd put me through. "Mom," she wrote, "I finally understand what we did. To you. And I'm ashamed. I'm not writing to ask for money or reconciliation. I just want you to know that I've become a better person because of the lesson you taught us. I hope someday I'll be worthy of your forgiveness," I wrote back, telling her I was proud of the work she was doing and inviting her to visit me in North Carolina. It was a tentative first step toward rebuilding a relationship based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency. Rebecca and Michael never acknowledged their mistakes. They blamed me for their financial struggles and told anyone who would listen that their mother had abandoned them for foreign gold diggers. I felt sad for them, but no longer guilty. I learned that protecting yourself from exploitation isn't selfish. It's necessary. I learned that love without boundaries becomes enabling, and generosity without reciprocity becomes victimization. Most importantly, I learned that it's never too late to start over, to find people who value you for who you are rather than what you can give them. Today, at 57, I'm healthier, happier, and more financially secure than I've ever been. My foundation has helped thousands of veterans. My investments are thriving under professional management, and I'm surrounded by people who respect and appreciate me. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones we love most. But that doesn't mean we have to accept that hurt or enable their behavior. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever felt taken advantage of by family members or struggled with setting boundaries with people you love, please share this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us tell more stories about real people facing real challenges and finding the courage to protect themselves and rebuild their lives. Remember, you deserve respect, regardless of how much money you have or how generous you've been in the past. Never let anyone, not even family, convince you otherwise. Thank you for listening to my story. Until next time, stay strong and stay smart.